Greetings all. So, news of the day type video on the Entertainment Guy channel. I ended up doing this on the NHL channel or the hockey channel today because there really wasn't much of anything that came out other than still fallout from all this stuff going on that's not really related to either channel. So, um, I had a Patreon live stream today where I gave my opinion on things, but I try to keep it off of the other mainstream ways of uh, consuming my content. So, anyways, there's something that's kind of funny. So they released these short treks, which are Star Trek Discovery little short stories that are like 5-10 minutes. They're great. I don't understand. Like some of them are kind of iffy, but they feel like Star Trek, and they feel good. And not only that, but it shows that Tilly's character could be great. Tilly could be one of those all-time classic characters. She sort of reminds me of Barclay from Star Trek Next Generation, who is, of course, Murdoch from A-Team, full on respect. But, and there's going to be people watching this going, wait, that was the same actor? Yes, it was. So, and yes, I am old, thanks for asking. Star Trek Next Generation, you always had these characters that were secondary characters that you would see an episode around them, whether it was Barclay or whether it was Ensign Rowe, another character I liked a lot in Next Generation. And they were entertaining. They were entertaining characters, and they were something that I think, and I've said this before, I think with the new Star Trek, it's kind of lacking the all around 3D characters. Tilly could be that. Absolutely. Tilly's got that potential. I know the engineer as well. I know the potential was there with him, and part of what bothered me with Discovery was there's a good story in there. There's some good stuff in there, but then it gets caught behind the sensationalistic stuff that's in there, whether it's the violence or the language or whatever it is. And it just doesn't quite click. But the short ones show me there's some really good stuff in there, and it makes it all the more frustrating to go, yeah, this is really entertaining. Why can't the episodes? I guess part of, I think, where current science fiction has an issue, and this may be a generational view. I miss when it was episodic. I miss when there are standalone episodes. You can have your overarching storyline, but just episodes that are just sort of standalone. You can go, all right, you can watch that and go, it was a fun little. They went to a planet, they had an adventure, and the adventure ended, and it all wrapped up in 52 minutes of screen time. Cool. And then you move on to the next adventure, and then you're going to have the overarching storylines. Next Generation had that where, I mean, the one that stands out to me is where the weird symbionts were in people's throats, and all the admirals at Starfleet were all, monsters, and eventually you got to off them all. And then so you have that episode, and then you have Starfleet thrown into chaos after that. And there's some chaos at the top, and there's a nice payoff of that, and it does go somewhere. But you still have episodes in between that are standalones, and that's kind of where I think I miss that with it. It's like everything has to be a soap opera now. And maybe that's why soap operas are gone, because now everything's a soap opera. Almost. Sitcoms aren't quite there yet, but they have their moments. Speaking of which, Schooled got canceled, season 2. This was announced last week. Because I was looking around for which shows got canceled, and this was officially announced as canceled on May 22nd. So I'm not going to put it in the title, because people know it's canceled, I would think. Although we may not be paying as much attention to what's renewed or canceled at this point in time in history as we might be any other year. It's kind of too bad, because Schooled had a lot of potential, and yet I watched the first couple episodes and I went, It kind of had the this is really unnecessary feel to it. Like, do we care what happened to Coach Mellor 10 years later? I like Coach Mellor on Goldbergs, don't get me wrong, and I like Tim Meadows' principal character on the Goldbergs as well. Do I care what happened to them 10 years later? Probably not. Do I care about Lainey and what happened to her 10 years later? Uh, I like Ali Michalka, AJ Michalka, sisters. I think they're both good actresses, but no, that's not reason enough for me to necessarily tune into a show. And so, yeah, I'm not necessarily surprised that it got canceled after season 2. And so, throw them back on the Goldbergs, all of them. Lainey too, bring her back. And yeah, I don't know. Goldbergs, I don't know that you can do because this was their one spinoff, so I'm guessing there won't be another one. It just didn't seem like the kind of show that you would necessarily want to see a spinoff from. And here we are. Now, here's some interesting news from today too, that, or at the very least that I was reading about today, which is Ahmed Best, who was Jar Jar Binks, is now going to be the host of the Jedi Temple Challenges, a game show. He has a purple lightsaber, and so like, how do you get a purple lightsaber? Well, first off, I have a purple lightsaber. I have 3 different kyber crystals for mine that I got in Disneyland. I don't want to show off or anything, but it's purple, yellow, and green. So I have a pretty rare. It's pretty rare item, pretty rare artifact, and I'm pretty proud of that. So yes, he gets purple lightsaber. Kudos to him. Mine currently the kyber crystal I have in mine is yellow. It's fantastic, and that shows like a balance of the force. So I do know what these things mean. And so I thought, no, if I'm gonna have a Jedi character, and believe me, I'm way ahead of everybody for Halloween. If there's a possibility everybody's gonna wear masks, be a Jedi. A Jedi and Ninja, that should be the most popular Halloween costumes, or both the Jedi Ninja. We'll see what I do with it, but the yellow lightsaber is important, as is purple. One thing with purple is when I film it on camera, it looks blue on camera. It doesn't look purple, so not sure what that's all about. Speaking of Star Wars, Disney Plus is going to have a live-action Star Wars series that has Ezra in it. Star Wars Rebels is just an excellent show. It was an excellent show for a cartoon. It was great, and it shows that with Disney, I think as long as they're not tied to the Skywalker anthology, they're good. Most of the stuff they've done has been actually pretty good. The Mandalorian stands out, and of course we're going to see Ahsoka on there. And we saw the Darksaber on there. All excited about that as well. And so the live action series that'll have Ezra in it. I'd be interested to know where it's going to be set and when. And whether we're going to see a young Ezra, if we're going to see an older Ezra. I think one thing that sort of bothered me when it came to Revenge of the Sith was, execute Order 66. And all right, all the Jedis are gone. And I thought, well, no. And they do hint at that at the end, right? Where Obi-Wan's, sending out that signal from the Jedi Temple to just, okay, everybody go the other way. But the way that Star Wars A New Hope goes with it is that, Vader's the last of his religion, and here's Obi-Wan, who's an old guy, and, now he's going to train Luke, and the idea that they're the only ones left. But I think when Disney's making it a larger universe, I think we're going to see that storyline kind of change, where yes, in the Skywalker area, and in terms of Sith, you just have that very small little group of 3, Luke, Darth Vader, and Palpatine. But there's something else going on in the rest of the galaxy when it comes to Jedi. And maybe Ezra went into hiding. Maybe he's been hiding for decades. Maybe he comes back out. Or maybe this will be him running from the Empire after Order 66 is given. Running from clone troopers, then stormtroopers. Now, on to wrestling news. This is the weird thing with WWE. So this came out after their episode there where they had Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes were on AEW. And after that, they were no longer allowed to be in WWE, and they were told, nope, you're done. You're blackballed. You're off. And there's been a lot of talk about, if you're independent, you're on your own, you don't belong to either company. If you appear on AEW material, and I'm saying material because it's not just their show. It's not just, on their show on TNT, but outside of Dynamite, if you're on their YouTube channel, you could get it too. Vicky Guerrero apparently is the latest that WWE's kind of blackballed her. And Jim Ross being very, very vocal about it online, just thinking it's BS. That Vicky Guerrero, who, WWE employee for a very long time. And, I saw Vicky on AEW, and I was like, okay, now that was just a weird video where they're all pretending they're punching each other, and they're all, whatever. But, I thought that was strange, but I thought, that's fine. That's fine. Eddie Guerrero, Vicky Guerrero, they would have some kind of relationship with the Rhodes family, obviously. That long in wrestling, I'm sure she's friends with a bunch of people, and here we go. If you appear on their programming, and then later this week, FTR, formerly known as the Revival. I just think FTR, formerly the Revival, works, but because it's not free the Revival, and I'm not saying what they actually have as their name right now. I'll say formerly the Revival. They're going to be on Jim Cornette's podcast. And immediately people are like, okay, they're going to completely slag talk WWE. I hope they don't. I hope they talk more about what they want to do. They can talk about their creative frustrations when they were there, certainly. But talk about what they want to do and what the future is, and how they can make this work. I think, the picture that came out on social media of them with Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, that's spot on, because right from the first time I saw them, I was like, oh, that's Arn and Tully. Just the way that they wrestle, their chemistry in the ring, their prowess in the ring, just the move set they have, everything about it just screams Arn and Tully. So I'm glad they're leaning into that, and AEW is the perfect place for them. So again, while it's easy to take sides and go AEW is better, WWE is better, for me, I view it more as it's better to have two healthy companies than to have one, to have wrestlers with a choice. So if somebody goes to AEW and they go, man, I don't like this, they got WWE, and vice versa. Somebody goes to WWE, they're not enjoying themselves, their contract runs out, they can go to AEW. Having two solid companies to go to in the US is better than one. And of course, then you've got New Japan, there's Mexican promotions as well, other Japanese promotions. There are a lot of places to go, and just AEW adds another one that can pay pretty well. So, moving on from that, Major League Baseball, because I do talk about baseball occasionally on here, they're ticking me off. So, this is something that's been there for a long time. I think where we've been is this. Baseball owners make a lot of money. Baseball players make a lot of money. And there hasn't been any talk of a salary cap in a long time. So there's really no reason for them to go to war with each other. It's kind of like, okay, as long as we're throwing more money at the players, they'll shut up. And for the owners, as long as they're making their share of the money, they'll shut up. And now we're in this grips of financial constraints and stresses. And now this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we see things potentially change. Major League Baseball wants to come back in July. They had an 82-game schedule that they proposed. Baseball players came back with a 114-game schedule. How do you play 114? The fact that they're not even talking about having it in centralized locations is going to make it difficult enough to do this in a safe manner. It is going to be so tough. And as an NHL fan, the NHL's really trying to thread the eye of the needle with this too. It's going to be very, very difficult for sports this year. But the next proposal, apparently from owners, may be 50 or 60 games, but it would give them full prorated salaries, meaning they get the full salary for the amount of games they play. I don't know. The problem is the trust level isn't there, and it hasn't been there for a long time. Look back to last spring when a lot of really high-profile players were sitting out there as free agents, and immediately players talk about collusion. I didn't see it that way personally. I saw it more as general managers and owners looking at the amount of money these players are demanding and going, none of us are paying that. And I didn't see it as a collusion thing. I didn't see teams sitting down and going, all right, we all agree they're not worth it, right? Okay, and break. Because owners don't really work that way at baseball level. I haven't seen it. Again, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I've never seen it. There's definitely been... for a very long time in baseball, you have your rich teams and your poor teams, and the rich teams have never worried about what the poor teams can afford. Now, whether or not all the rich teams got together and said, oh, forget it. The way that I looked at it was them realizing one player isn't worth that amount of money. We can't justify paying one player that huge amount of money. So, yeah, the distrust level is high, and that's why I don't have any optimism that we're going to see baseball in July. I have the almanac for baseball for this year. And to be honest, with the way that they're not really having discussions and just kind of sniping at each other, I don't think we get baseball this year. I don't think it's going to happen. I think both the owners and the players are perfectly fine to just say, forget it. And during this time, if the NHL figures out a way to make it happen, the NBA figures out a way to make it happen, the NFL makes something happen as well, Major League Baseball is playing with fire. It is America's pastime, and it is always going to be, a popular sport in the U.S., but they could lose market share, and they could be making a big mistake, because for decades, they've had to fight this perception that of all the major sports, baseball is the greediest. And this would kind of prove that's true. and it's bad on both. So this isn't just a bad on the baseball players, bad on the owners. It's for both. So I'm not leaning towards one side or the other. I think it looks bad for both sides, especially right now. This is not the time to be having this huge fight. This is the time to sit down and discuss it. And the fact that it's a proposal from one side to the other, and then the other side answers, and then it's different. In the NHL, they're actually discussing this face to face and trying to come up with joint agreements. And it feels like in the NBA, they're working together to create joint agreements. Salary caps make you work together, and in baseball, that just doesn't happen. So whether or not this is what finally causes some kind of seismic shift in baseball, we'll see. Because I didn't like salary caps before we got one in the NHL, and now that I've had almost 15 years of seeing hockey play with one, they help. And it really doesn't cost the players a lot of money. It just means your salary is tied to the income of the league, and it is in the best interest of the league to make sure there's as much parity as possible. I think it's been good, but we'll see what happens with baseball. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, wherever you are, be safe. I hope everybody that's watching this is safe and happy and healthy. And 2020, it sucks. I'll talk to you again soon.